Once upon a time, in a small village on a parched stretch of land, there lived two poor farmers side by side. They weren't wealthy, weren't educated, and weren't remarkable, except for one shared trait. They both toiled endlessly to feed their families on tiny plots of soil. One day, both passed away at the same time. Their souls were brought before God. God looked upon them with calm eyes and asked, "In your past lives, what did you feel most lacking?" The first farmer stepped forward, his eyes clouded with years of bitterness. "Dear Lord, my life was a punishment. I worked like an ox every day, yet there was never enough to eat. I had nothing but dirt, hunger, and exhaustion. Others got to live. I merely survived like an animal." God listened silently, then asked, "And what do you wish for in your next life?" The man did not hesitate. "Please let me never have to give anything to anyone. I only want to receive from everyone." God nodded. "You shall have what you wish." The second farmer stepped forward, hands folded, eyes lowered in gratitude. "Dear Lord, I have no complaints. I had land, a wife and children, and strength to work. That's already much. But there is one regret I carry. Sometimes the hungry came to my door. I could give them a glass of water, but not a single grain of rice. In those moments I felt helpless and ashamed." God looked at him gently and asked, "Then what do you wish for in your next life?" The man softly replied, "Please grant me the means, so that no one who comes to my door must leave with an empty belly or an empty heart. I want to be someone who gives." God smiled. "You shall have what you wish." No one in the village knew that the destinies of those two men, in their next lives, were sealed by how they looked back on their past. In the one moment they were truly honest. The one who resented only saw what he lacked. The one who was grateful saw how he still fell short in giving. And so, in their next lives, one became a beggar. The other, the richest man in the village, not because of fate, but because the seeds of their next lives were sown in the soil of intention and karma. Many years passed since the moment those two souls stepped through the gates of the divine. Same poor village, same world reborn. But their fates now couldn't be more different. The man who once wished, "I never want to give anything to anyone, I only want to receive," was now the beggar sitting at the edge of the village. Each day, he sat by the roadside with an old wooden bowl. The villagers, moved by pity, would drop in coins, a bit of rice or a piece of bread. He didn't have to work, didn't have to share. No one came asking him for anything. His wish from his past life had come true. And because of that, he had nothing left. As for the man who once said, "I only wish to be able to give more," he had become the wealthiest and most respected man in the village. Not the kind of wealth that shows off, but the kind that draws people close. His house was never closed. The poor came and were fed. The thirsty were given water. Those without land were offered a plot. People called him Old Kindness because whoever came to him was greeted with food, water, and a gentle heart. One sat at the market gate with an outstretched bowl, one at the far end of the village with open hands that gave. But no one knew. They were the very same two souls who once stood side by side before God. No miracles, no lottery winnings, no fairy godmother stepping in. Just this. One man wished to give, so life gave him enough to share. One man wished only to receive, so life left him with only the act of holding out his hands. And thus, the law of karma unfolded, not through emotion, but through principle. If we live with a selfish heart, always feeling deprived, always demanding, life will slowly shrink around what we think we lack. But if we live with gratitude and a longing to share, life will expand with things we thought we didn't have enough of, but turn out to be overflowing. Because what we receive is always an echo of what we once sent out. It was a scorching summer afternoon. Sunlight poured down onto the dusty road. The beggar, now old, with blurred eyes and trembling hands, sat in his usual spot. In front of him was his old wooden bowl, empty. Suddenly, a figure stopped in front of him. No words, just a quiet gesture, gently placing a cloth pouch still warm and fragrant with glutinous rice into the bowl. The old man looked up. Before him stood a man, strong build, clean clothes, gentle eyes. There was something strangely familiar, as if they had met long ago. "Who are you?" The man smiled. "I'm the one who shared a past life with you. We once stood side by side, before a question. And each of us chose a different path." That simple sentence pierced through the haze of forgotten memory. The beggar's hands trembled. His lips quivered. "I made that wish. I once thought that if I only received and never had to give, I'd be happier. But now I see, I've never felt more empty than when I had everything, yet nothing to offer." He looked into the eyes of the man before him. "And you? Why do you seem so full, yet so deeply at peace?" The wealthy man nodded slowly, his voice soft. "Because I hold nothing for myself. Everything I have is what life entrusted to me to pass on, and the more I give, the less poor I feel." He bent down, gently adjusted the strap of the rice pouch, and said, "I didn't come here to help you. I came to return what you once taught me when you chose the path of only receiving. Because of that, I discovered the opposite path is the way to freedom." One sat, hands trembling, receiving something he once gave up an entire life to have. One stood, hands steady, filled with gratitude for being able to live a life of giving. No one was greater than the other. The only difference was this: one lived to demand, the other lived to offer. The beggar bowed his head for a long time, not for the pouch of rice, but because, for the first time, he realized he once had everything, but never knew how to cherish it. Amid the dry, searing heat, one sat, one stood, a wooden bowl lay between two hands, and in that stillness, a life lesson quietly returned, complete at last. After that encounter, the beggar no longer sat at the edge of the village. He began to walk around, still hunched, still frail, but now, in his hands, he carried a small basket lined with dry banana leaves. Inside, a few roasted sweet potatoes. What little he had received, he now shared with others. It wasn't much, it wasn't pretty, but it was genuine. "I once thought just receiving was enough. Now I understand, to live without being able to give is the deepest kind of poverty." The richest man in the village, the one who once wished to give, was now older, hair silver. But he still opened his gates every morning. His small home always echoed with laughter, greetings, footsteps of those asking for food, and none were ever turned away. One day, he told his grandson, "If one day you have something to give it with your whole heart. And if you don't have anything yet, then don't withhold a smile, because what you give today will return to you tomorrow in ways far greater than you can imagine." The boy nodded, not fully understanding. But years later, after losing everything in a storm, he understood. It was those who once received rice from his grandfather who came back to help rebuild everything. Karma bears no grudges, shows no favoritism. It simply returns what we once sent out. Send out greed and receive emptiness. Send out bitterness and receive loneliness. But send out love, generosity, and gratitude, and life will return with meaning. The beggar, in the last years of his life, no longer begged. He picked up trash, swept temple yards, arranged dry leaves under trees so the elderly wouldn't slip. One autumn afternoon, he smiled at a child who asked, Grandpa, why do you still help people, even though you're so old?" He gently patted the child's head. "Because I once lived a life of only taking. And I learned that's the fastest way to lose everything. We live in an imperfect world, but each of us can make it better by choosing what we sow from within. We don't need wealth to give. We don't need power to help. We only need a heart that still aches at the pain of others, and that alone can create miracles. Because what we give today will return, sooner or later, as a thank you from the universe."